Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Aware Athlete Show. I am your host, Scott Forrester, and today we have a real treat for you. We have as our guest Mary Davison, and Mary has written a book titled The Old Lady on the Trail, Triple Crown at 76. So it's a great book. Just finished reading it. And Mary, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Yeah. So could you tell our listeners to start with, what is a Triple Crown?
Okay, a triple crown in long distance hiker terms is completing the Appalachian Trail, the Pacific Crest Trail, and the Continental Divide Trail.
Right. And those are our three major north-south trails that we have, scenic national trails that we have in the United States then.
Right. They are the national scenic trails.
And that would be between 7,000 and 8,000 miles of hiking, somewhere in there.
More than, let's see. Yeah, that's about right.
Yeah, about 3,100 miles for the CDT and about 2,650 for the PCT, and then 21 something, almost 22 for the AT.
Yes, it's interesting. Over the years, the numbers changed slightly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because there are trail improvements or trails that have to go a little bit different way, or trails that get to go a little bit different way. But that's basically it.
So you have a life history actually that prepared you for doing this. And can you tell us a little bit about you? I know you had a camping history as a child, and then you had three careers at least that kind of blend into experiences that helped you out. So can you tell us about your background a little bit?
Okay. Well, the surface bit for right now is I'm a retired pastor. I did grow up. Well, actually, I'm 80 now. When I finished the Triple Crown, I was 76. I am still hiking and backpacking, but not on the Triple Crown trails, on other ones. I grew up and I was a Girl Scout, but before even that, my family camped. We went on trips places and we always camped. Actually camped at Washington, D.C., a stone's throw from the Jefferson Memorial. Now it's a big freeway right there. So, but they had a little trailer park and a little square of grass for campers.
Yeah.
And so I've been camping for a long time. I did not start long distance hiking until the year I turned 60. But I'd been camping, hiking, taking small backpack trips ever since I was a Girl Scout. So,
yeah. So the Girl Scouts really got you into it, as well as your family background there. And then you had some adventures in your adult life too, the Peace Corps.
Right. I was in the Peace Corps in Turkey for, I always have to say it in Turkish and then translate, 1965 to 1967, from 1965 to 1967. My first husband was military, so we traveled around a lot. I did come back to the Pacific Northwest. I live in Washington. In Puyallup, which is on the wet side, about 40 miles south of Seattle. Right after I was out of college, I moved up here for my first job and was a member of the Mountaineers for a couple of years. So way back in those days, I did climbed Mount Rainier and Mount St. Helens when it was there. And Mount Baker and Mount Shasta, and a few big climbs like that. So I did have some experience on glaciers and how to use an ice axe and those kinds of things. Way back.
Yeah, that was very helpful when you did the Sierras then.
It was very helpful on Forrester Pass.
Yeah, that happens to be my name. Yeah, Forrester.
Oh, no, not Forrester Pass. Actually, yes, that is your name. I got the place wrong. San Jacinto
Oh, okay, yeah.
was actually where I really did need my ice axe. But I'm a section hiker. I'm not a through hiker.
Mhm, mhm.
So I put them together as sections. I did do all of them, but as a section hiker. So I take, generally speaking, 2 long hikes a year of about 6 weeks each, probably between 300 and 500 miles each time. And once you stitch them together, you have all the trails.
Right, right. So I actually like section hiking the PCT because it would be too much for me to leave my family for 6 months.
Right.
Yeah,
I have a life other than hiking. So, yeah, I mean, what I came up with was right for me. So
right.
it's not right for everybody, but I don't claim to be a through hiker, but at this point I have well over 10,000 miles of long distance hiking. So
That is so amazing and so inspiring. And there's at least 2 things that are inspiring about it. One, I just turned 71 a few months ago. And so I was looking at 80. Boy, I might not be able to hike at 80, but there you're still doing it. So
I am at 80. I have no idea how long I can, but I'm working on the American Discovery Trail now, which goes coast to coast. I wrote a second book, Aren't You Afraid? Because that's the question everybody asked me. And that one was about going from the Atlantic Ocean to Omaha. This last spring, I got almost all of Nebraska in. And in about a month, I'll be on the trail, hopefully getting about 3/4 of Utah done. So
awesome.
I can still walk, I can still get up and down from the ground, and those are the 2 essential skills for hiking.
Yeah, no. So those at least 2 things really inspiring there. One, you're still doing it at 80, and 2, this has been a lifelong love. And so
Yes.
not only are you still doing something that's inspiring to everybody at 80, but you're still doing the things you love at 80.
I am.
Yeah.
I don't know how much longer I can do it. Age does make a difference. But right now, yeah, I've got my next. We worked in this interview because shortly I will not be available for a while. I will be on the trail.
I know. That's what you said. Yeah. So you'll be back out on the American Discovery Trail?
It's the American Discovery Trail. It goes coast to coast, and I'm doing a section that goes actually from almost Grand Junction, Colorado to Circleville, Utah. It looks good on paper. We'll see if I get it all done.
I know. It's so different when you get out there. You discover there are obstacles that you wouldn't have thought of.
Well, I do spring and late summer, fall hikes, so the weather is always a question.
Yeah.
And there are things that can happen on the trail, and you just don't know until you're doing it.
Right. And those are more or less the best times to hike, depending on where you're at. You might want to do more of a summer hike, maybe if you're doing the Sierras, but anyway, or late summer.
Actually, I did that in the late summer, and it was perfect because there was just enough snow. Well, this year there might not be, but the year I did it, there was just enough snow left to be pretty in the pictures. But I didn't really have to deal with much.
Yeah, that's good. This was a record snow year, I think, or record low snow year.
I mean, it's the drought and the heat that all the snow is being melted everywhere.
Right. So there's a lot of interesting details that some of our listeners might not know. So what's the difference in terms of the experience and how and fitness and so on between a through hiker and a section hiker?
Well, a through hiker for, say, the Pacific Crest Trail, you can go north or south, but typically starts at the Mexican border and goes all the way north until they hit Canada.
Right.
And that takes, Usually about 5 months, I think, unless you're trying to set a record.
Which just happened.
Yeah, but I know a couple on the Pacific Crest Trail this year. They're having a just horrid time because of all the fires.
Oh yeah,
Right now, all the way from can't think of the name of the pass. It starts with an S. That's an age thing. Sonora Pass to Oregon is closed.
yeah.
It's
Yeah.
closed.
Yeah, there's closures in Oregon too.
Cascade Lake to Crater Lake, I think.
Yeah,
So all that way is now closed because of fires. It's a horrid, horrid fire year.
yeah. I just did this summer. I did Castella, California to Crater Lake.
Right.
I was lucky I got that done because the second to last day before I got to Crater Lake, I was stuck. I'm in a cloud of smoke. I got to sleep. There's nothing I can do about it. I'm not going to walk that trail at night, not that particular,
No.
not where I was. And there was nothing I could do about it. I tied a t-shirt around my face to keep the ash from going in, but you can only keep the large particles out. And I forgot my smoke mask.
Yeah. It's a tough year.
And so I'm so glad I got that done.
For me in Utah too, because all the smoke from California is headed to Utah.
Yeah. West prevailing winds, and it goes right out that way into Montana, Wyoming. Yeah.
Right. I never realized until I did the CDT how all the West Coast smoke affects everything east of us.
Yeah. I think some of it has reached New York, according to what I've heard.
Yeah.
So now, this is a little bit of an aside, but as I walk through some of the burn areas that are miles long, some people say, "Oh, that's boring. You could even hike that at night," and so on. But what I found it a little bit disturbing too, and what we're doing to the environment, and I understand, and I've read that some of the forest management services are actually turning back toward the Native Americans to say, "Hey, how do we better manage our forests?" And
there's different ways to manage the forest, but we're talking about an enormous expanse of land in the West and continual high heat. And Native Americans never had to deal with as high of a temperature as we are in and headed to. So
that's quite true. Yeah.
I'm not saying they don't have things to teach us, because they certainly do.
Yeah. But, you're right that it's all compounded.
Yeah. We're living in a different world.
They had 113 degrees in Portland this year. And here in Lapine, it tends to be Lapine, Oregon, it tends to be kind of a cold climate. I mean, you can have temperatures in the 30s, high 30s,
right.
And going into summer in the morning.
Yes.
And we had 108 here. So quite a heat wave.
Yes.
So anyway, so I found out, and you mentioned in your book, that a thru hiker who starts in Mexico and by the time you maybe encounter them in Northern California, has already got a lot of miles on their legs. And they do some things you wouldn't believe that people could do.
Yeah, they're kind of superhuman by that time.
Yeah, they are. They are. And if you stay on the trail 3 weeks or even a month, you're kind of getting better at it. You're kind of starting to get those trail legs. And especially, you can make miles in Oregon. Some of the nicer trails. But they'll pass you like you're standing still.
Yep.
Especially.
And I have never met a hiker yet who didn't say, "Oh, I'm a slow hiker."
Yeah.
And they say that while they're zooming by me.
Yeah. And I've noticed that there is a difference between thru hikers too. There's the super speedy ones, and then there's the kind of speedy ones.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So, but it's an interesting phenomenon because if you're a young person or even if you're an older person and you've walked the entire trail, you have a level of fitness that probably cannot be attained to just by training.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so amazing.
Well, even if you are a section hiker, and I'm not saying I'm the best in the West or anything like that, but because I'm a section hiker, the trail has blessed me with far better health and a far better body at this age than I would have had if I was not wanting to be on trail every year. I mean, yes, I get ready to be on trail, but because I do, it has paid off in big dividends in my health as well.
Right. So what you're saying there is you can continue to do the things you love because you continue to do the things you love.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's a cycle.
Yes.
And then this thing about getting off the floor. I know a lot of, well, okay. So back to your careers. You did the Peace Corps, but you were also a physical therapist or in physical therapy. I was a physical therapist assistant for 10 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I've worked with a lot of older people, my age, your age, and they're not very interested in getting off the floor, but it's such a functional skill.
Right.
And if you don't do it, you can't do it.
And if you don't, I mean, for anyone, not just a hiker, it's a really important skill to have.
Yeah.
Because as we age, the chances of our falling down somewhere are pretty good.
Yeah.
And I would say it's a life skill that people shouldn't give up. I do have, I am old. I do have lots of arthritis. I have 2 knee replacements. I have 2 shoulder replacements. But when I don't try to be my own physical therapist, I'm smart enough to know I need to go to someone who's doing it right now. And part of my therapy goals have always been I have to be able to get up and down from the floor.
Wow, that's good.
And if you have knee replacements, sometimes that takes a bit of creativity because when you have metal inside pressing on soft tissue into floors or stone, kneeling isn't a very fun thing. So I actually don't have my knees touch when I'm getting down and getting up.
Yeah. So that's interesting. Could you tell me a little bit about how you actually do that without the knees touching?
Yeah, it's hard to tell. It's easier to demonstrate. If I sit down, my feet are outside the tent. I twist to my side, put both hands down, stick my butt up in the air, my feet are on the ground, my hands are on the ground, and then I stand up.
Yeah, if you're able to use both hands, that really helps a lot.
Yes.
Yeah.
It is. I have a good friend who's also been a hiker, and she's in the book with me a few places, but she's had some extensive back surgeries, so she can't do that twist anymore.
Oh, that's important.
Yeah. She has figured out that she can get on her knees. She does have 1 knee replacement, but she can do it, and she has figured out how she can get up too. So she can also still get in and out of a tent.
Yeah. The human body has. Go ahead.
Do it my way, but my way works for me because my back is still reasonable. When I'm sitting down with my feet outside of the tent, I cross a leg first. So that when I twist over, my feet will be in the right position.
Yeah. So it's sort of a spiral as you come up. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is really an efficient way to do that anyway.
Yes.
So, okay. So I found it very interesting how you begin your training between hikes. Let's say you come home and you've spent time with your grandkids or whatever, and you haven't hiked for a while, but you're planning another hike, and then you want to get ready for it. So can you tell us how you begin your training for a hike?
Yeah, and especially after a surgery, but even just regular training, um, I walk a little, and I mean a little, but I do it in a very disciplined way. So we'll say like after a surgery, if you have a knee replacement, um, to begin with, you're on a walker. You're walking, but you're on a walker. My first goal is to get to the mailbox
Yeah,
and back. And then my next goal is, well, can I get to the mailbox and go one or two houses past that and back? And I just very gradually increase that. Then you're off a walker and on a cane. And wow, can I get to the end of the block with my cane and back? I mean, I very intentionally, in a disciplined way, add a little bit every day. And by the time you're into 2 blocks, you're probably adding half a block at least every day. And then before long, you're doing miles.
yeah,
But I don't just start out and go do miles.
right.
I start out by doing a little bit. And I'm a busy person. I have a lot of stuff to do. And so I can convince myself to get out of the door to do a little bit. It's not going to take very much time. And then I still work at building it up, but in a disciplined, gradual way. And I think for an older person, that's really important that you do. I mean, when you're 40, you can just go out of the block and go do very hard things, and your body might complain to you, but you can do it.
Yeah,
I don't think you can, or at least I can't when I got to be 70. I have to work in a very disciplined way just by walking. So walking in my neighborhood, I have a 4-mile route. So right now, I do hiking too, but I have a little injury right now that's bothering me right now. So I'm doing speed walking in my neighborhood. So I'm not doing elevation gain and loss right now with poles because of a little injury I got. So, like I say, there's always things that happen. So I'm letting that injury heal, but I'm still training by doing speed walking. And, when I was 45, I could do 15-minute miles speed walking. Now I can only do about 20 or 21-minute miles, but I can still get out there and work hard.
yeah. Well, a 20-minute mile will take you some miles on the trail.
Well, I probably can't do that fast on the trail with a pack,
Yeah,
but to just keep in a reasonable amount of shape, just walking in my neighborhood. And so I'm going out and I'm right now doing 3 miles before breakfast. That at least keeps everything moving.
right. So you take the same approach, I'm sure, even if you haven't just had a surgery. You're still.
Yes, I do. Although I'm not on a walker trying to get to my mailbox. I
Right.
might say, okay, I'm going to go start. So let's go down, do 1 block and back. That's a good starting place for
Yeah,
if I'm not recovering from surgery, and then the next week do 2 blocks and back. Well, you're almost at a half a mile then. And then, so, 6 blocks and back. It doesn't take very many weeks before you're into miles.
yeah. No, I really love that approach, and I've used it a lot myself. And but it's an approach that most people don't take. They just think they got to get out there and do more, and that becomes discouraging. If you're doing a little bit more than you're ready for.
The other thing that I think is really important for hikers who age, because I know it's been important for me, is to try really, really, really hard not to compare yourself to other hikers or to your former self.
Yeah.
You're not your former self anymore. You're yourself who you are now.
And, yeah, it's so easy to think you are, because just a couple of years ago, I've noticed a difference with myself. 2 to 4 years has made a difference.
Yes. You're out there and I'm out there and we're accomplishing things.
Yeah.
Are we like the through hikers? No, we're not. But that's okay. I got a triple crown. They got a triple crown. I just did it differently.
Yeah, yeah,
It took me longer.
yeah,
I'm a through hiker. I didn't do it in 3 years. I did it in about 12 or 14 years. But I did it all.
yeah.
And now I've worked my way more than halfway across the country. So um, you can still do things. You can't do the same way, but you can still accomplish things. It's only
Right.
one step at a time, however you do it.
I think that's a message that really stands out in your book. And I think that's one of the most important things in the entire book. Especially if you're older, you have to say don't compare yourself to your former self or to other people, because especially if you're kind of new to longer section hiking, you see those through hikers whizzing by you, and it's, the comparison is there. It's just right in front of your eyes. But
Yes,
you have to be okay with that.
I know that's not me, but it
Yeah,
doesn't mean I can't be out there and I can't accomplish the same things.
right.
I just do it at a different speed. On the AT, when I was doing the AT, I started thinking, well, if I asked a through hiker how long it took to get to the next shelter, and they said 15 minutes, I knew it would be half an hour.
Yeah.
Now I think it's probably 45 minutes
Yeah.
in comparison. That's okay. It gives me an idea how long I have to go. I just know that I'm not going to get there in 15 minutes.
Right. Right. There was a moment out on the trail when I did my first 100-mile section,
Uh-huh.
and without resupplying. And I thought, I have to be happy with exactly where I am today, exactly how I feel today, exactly where I am on the trail and geographically, and exactly my fitness level right now. I just have to be happy with that.
Well, you're
And
out there. It's glorious.
yeah, it is glorious.
It's glorious. I enjoy being out there. And um, no, I can't do what I could do when I was 40, but that doesn't mean I have to stop.
Yeah. And we apply this, and that's wonderful. Keep going till you're not here anymore.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. And but we can apply this to athletes at any age, because
right.
especially the younger ones are almost more likely to overdo.
Yes.
And it doesn't pay off. Listening to Mark Allen, 6-time world Hawaii Ironman champion, and he's explaining how he would train differently than other people, and the patience he put into it, and especially when he was 37, which is an old fossil for the Ironman World Championships, and he did less training than the others and won.
Uh-huh.
He was very careful with himself and with his entire person.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, and
You know,
so even at the highest level, don't compare yourself to other people.
and if you push beyond, I mean, we can always do a little more than we think we can.
Yeah.
I'm not saying not to try to get a little bit farther than you really have planned. But when you're on a long distance hike, there's a big safety issue here. I plan a certain amount of miles. Could I go more? And do I sometimes? Yes. And sometimes you have to. So you'd better be able to.
Right.
But I don't want to do it every single day. I would find that I couldn't. So when I was doing what the book is about, I probably planned 15-mile days, 13 to 15-mile days. Have I done a few 20-mile days? Yes. And sometimes that's because, well, there's nowhere to camp here. I have to go farther.
Right.
And I can. But if I were to be doing that every single day, I would be injured.
Yeah, exactly.
Uh-huh.
That's why an athlete can race, but then they need to train carefully.
Right. And in the book I mentioned it, I'm sure. At the end of the day, well, I'd say need, but that, anybody can do it anyway. I need to be tired. Okay. I need to know I've put a good day's work in.
Mhm.
And it's not critical how tired I am at the end of a day. It's critical what I'm like when I wake up in the morning.
Yeah.
The magic thing is to work as hard as I can and yet a good night's sleep, and I'm have enough recovery time to go again.
Right.
Uh,
So there's two aspects towards to long distance trails, and they merge together. And one of them is it's actually so enjoyable, the endurance aspect of it, and
yes,
the other is just the beauty of it. And they kind of merge together different ways. Like
yes.
sometimes all you can see is the rocks on the trail in front of you, but you're
You know,
always going to catch those wonderful vistas.
I have toyed with another book. I don't know if I'll ever get around to writing it. Why do hikers hike? And it's really not for the hikers necessarily. It's for the people who think they're all nuts. But there's many reasons hikers hike. One of them is to accomplish the miles. One of them is the beauty. One of them is to push your limits, to endurance, to know what you're doing. At this age, it's because I still can.
Yeah.
There's a whole ton of reasons that sometimes all dovetail together, and for other people, it's only one or two things, but that's why they hike. So
Right.
there's all kinds of different aspects to, is it views that get you all excited, or do you just love the flowers along the way? I mean, there's all kinds of aspects to the trail and to long distance hiking, including the other hikers, the people you meet.
Yeah. Yeah. That's something we haven't even mentioned, but there's quite a bit of community
Yes.
involved too. And so a lot of people are not really familiar with the difference between backpacking and long distance trails. And you just mentioned one of them, sometimes you have to go a certain distance. Well, they call the Pacific Crest Trail the Pacific Crest Trail because it follows ridge lines and crests and so on.
Right.
So a lot of times you're on a hillside and you can't camp there. You've got this little narrow footpath you're following, right, and there's no way you can lay down there. You just roll off the hill or the mountain or a terrible drop off. So you have to get to the next camp.
Well, there have been occasions, I can think of one on the Pacific Crest Trail and one or two on the Appalachian Trail where I simply cowboy camped on the trail, in the trail. Because,
but you had to find some place that was reasonably safe.
Yes, there wasn't, I mean, it was like that, it was steep on each side, one side going up, the other side going down. That's the only place I could be. And on the Appalachian Trail, the one I remember, my headlamp went out. Okay, this is where I'm staying.
Yeah. If you don't have moonlight.
It was flat enough on the trail I could lay down. And I had to be very careful. I didn't let any equipment escape because it would be gone.
That's another thing. If you take a break and you sit down on the side of the trail, you don't take a break sometimes on the downhill side. You don't want your poles rolling off or your pack.
Yes.
Yeah.
You have to be really careful, but there have been times that's happened. That I've had to actually cowboy camp in the middle of the trail. Oh well.
Yeah, you have to get up early enough that nobody steps on you. Yeah.
Yes, on that particular time on the AT, there were a couple of people who went by right while I was trying to get up. So
yeah,
that happens too.
Yeah. Yeah. I haven't had that experience. I've been able to get to the next flat spot, but
Yeah.
I did have an experience where I couldn't find an official campsite and I had to just lay down in the grass, but that worked.
Right. Well, on the Pacific Crest Trail, any flat spot will work.
Yeah.
Actually, on almost any of the trails, any flat spot will work.
Yeah.
The other thing, as a section hiker and an older section hiker, I do a lot of planning.
Mhm.
And through hikers have certain places that they get resupply, and I'll look at it and I'll think, I can't go that far, so how am I going to get resupply? And so I've had to be creative. I've had to sometimes add miles to get to where I can get a resupply. You know, I don't think a debate between which is harder is worthwhile. They're simply different. I know that I sometimes put more miles on because I can't carry as much food as far as they can because I have to arrange for resupply. So
Yeah. So
sometimes my PCT was longer than their PCT or
yeah,
CT or whatever.
I can imagine. Yeah. And the other thing that you have to do that forces you to walk a certain distance sometimes is you have to get to the next water supply.
That's right. Or you have to carry extra water. The CDT, that's quite an issue. The southern part of the PCT, that's quite an issue.
Now, in terms of older hikers, but not just older hikers, all hikers, I just recently had somebody say that they were, I can't remember, he wasn't that old. I think he was 50 years old or something. And I know, and he harkened back to his Marine Corps days where they'd put a 50-pound pack on you. And he may have even had some of that old equipment.
Yeah.
So he puts 50 pounds on himself and he's not in hiking shape. And he tried to do 8 or 9 miles and it was just about all he could do and didn't know if he'd do it again. So we know that there are solutions for that.
Yes. Yes.
So
well, the incredibly important one is the invention of lightweight equipment.
Yeah.
The through hikers love that also, generally speaking. But I think the reason that 70 and 80-year-olds are on the trail, at least for me, the reason I'm still on the trail is the invention of lightweight equipment.
Yeah. Yeah. I think if you go back far enough, there were people who know how to kind of do that before the companies got involved in it. But yeah, Ray Jardine and then Go Light, and now all the little cottage companies that we have.
Right.
Wonderful, wonderful lightweight gear. So tell us what base weight is and what's your general base weight?
Well, I'm not as super light as some because I'm a cold sleeper. So I have to have, I can't go quite as light as some, but my base weight is the weight of your gear and with no consumables added. So no water, no food, no fuel. If you want to be technical, no toilet paper, no anything that you have to resupply.
Yeah.
My base weight is usually it's usually about 14 pounds. There are super ultralight people who can go with about 9 pounds or less, but that wouldn't work for me. I mean, I've got it pared down about as far as I can pare it down for me.
Right. It has to work efficiently for you too.
I have to sleep too.
Yeah. But when I was much younger and I had young children, we did do some camping at 0 degrees or so at night. And I had worked outside a lot, so I knew, that you have to take care of yourself in the cold.
Yes, you do.
So, but I didn't understand, how you can only take what you need and that kind of thing. So
yes.
I think I had a
people
big
who are
pack.
doing 6 and 9 pounds are practically sleeping with no sleeping bag or like the Camino de Santiago, where you don't really have to take hardly anything.
Yeah. Yeah, I think one of the things that weighs me down just a little, I mean, it's not a big deal, but is my power banks for my phone and stuff.
Right.
I
right.
carry two of those, and you can't do much about the weight of those. And they're charging cords.
I have some little old lipstick things, and I keep my phone off during the day.
Yeah.
I do have a separate Garmin GPS. All those things go into planning and deciding what you carry and what you don't.
Yeah.
My phone is actually reserved for writing journals at night. So at the end, the only reason I could write these books is because almost all the time I've been doing long distance hiking, I have kept a daily journal electronically, and usually electronically. A little bit was with pencil and paper, but almost always electronically. So I turn my phone on at night. Sometimes I have reception, sometimes I don't, but I write my daily journal. And when I do have reception, then I send it to my cousin in San Diego, and she's the one who posts it up. So my phone, keeping my phone charged would require an enormous amount of battery, and I can't do that.
Yeah.
Or I choose not to do that. My Garmin InReach will go 5 days before I have to plug it back in.
Yeah.
So.
And you don't section hike much more than 5 days without resupplying?
That is correct.
Yeah.
I don't think on the Continental Divide Trail, there were a couple of times where I had to carry 8 days. I don't want to carry 8 days.
Yeah.
One of them worked okay because I was along the Gila River for a very long time, and so I never had to carry more than 1 liter of water.
But, that helps. Then you can carry the food.
But 8 days of food. It's the additions that the food and the water, and water in particularly, that water always weighs 2.2 pounds per liter, no matter how often you weigh it.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Very heavy, but it's worth it.
We have to have water. So that's a hard thing. So if I have to carry a lot of food plus water, it gets to where I can't. Yeah.
So there's food. So we talked about taking care of yourself by not comparing yourself to others, and by training in a disciplined but careful manner. So there's another aspect there, because I found that if I don't eat enough, I did 100 miles and I didn't want to carry much food. So yeah. So by the time you get done with that, I have to eat for a week solid to make up for it.
Yeah.
So that was obviously a bad idea. So I revamped what I did, and I began to take a break for water and food, even if it was only 5 or 10 minutes every hour. And then in the afternoon, I could add to that an hour and a half break, or even 2, and I could eat a lot more, eat my dinner and everything. Then I could hike a little bit more.
Right.
And so how much does your food weigh each day, and how much do you?
I'm not absolutely sure because I have it so dialed in, I never bother to weigh it anymore.
Yeah.
I know what works for me. It's anytime everybody wants to know about food, I want to say everybody does their food differently. They have their own likes and dislikes. My trail days, I'm just almost through packing for Utah. I know what works for me. It's not exciting.
Yeah, no, it's not.
Be a gourmet some of the time. I'm not a gourmet. I simply have a standard set of stuff I do. And I used to actually take more, and I take less now than I used to, but I know that it will work for me. Again, I'm out on the trail for 6 weeks, and I'll lose 5 pounds.
That's pretty good.
So what I've got dialed in works for me.
Yeah.
There'll be some 0 days there when I'm in town too, and eat a lot. But I know from experience what works for me.
Yes, it sounds like it
So,
works very well if you only lost.
so that's what I do.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, could I eat more? Yes, I could. And when I do get to town, yeah, most hikers I know when they get to town, they load up on calories.
yeah.
Uh, but I know what works for me, so I know what to take.
I can
And
tell. Yeah,
it's a matter of, okay, how many days before I get a resupply, or on the hike I'm doing in Utah, the the wonderful thing is I have a lot of support on this hike, and I really don't have to backpack very much. A lot of it is almost day hiking, but I have to plan. I still have to plan just as much.
right.
Okay, I still eat the same things on a day hike that I would on a backpack, except I get to have dinner.
Yeah. Oh, that's nice though. That's nice.
Differently. But
But
breakfast and lunches will be the same as if I was backpacking.
but you know the planning that you have to do.
Yes.
And I think a lot of people might think that the planning to do a long section height is so elaborate, it might even discourage them. And it's not necessarily so. I mean, I,
No.
I have a pocket PCT book, and that's so helpful. It's got all your mileages on there and where you can resupply and where the water supplies are trustworthy and where they're not, and all that kind of stuff. So, and with the gut hooks,
I would say all this modern stuff is really cushy.
I know because I had an expensive GPS unit. I still have it, and I can load, some really good maps in it. But the Gut Hooks app works so well for these trails. It's just
Yes,
amazing.
it does.
And I never
didn't
thought.
have- I didn't have gut hook until the last 2 or 3 years of the Continental Divide Trail. So all the rest of it, yeah, I grew up as a Girl Scout. You didn't have a cell phone. You didn't have anything
No,
like that.
no,
So
no.
I've always kind of laughed when people said, well, gee, you take your cell phone, don't you? And it's like, well, yeah. I can't tell you if I'll have reception, but I take
Yeah.
it.
Oh, you can go weeks without very good reception.
You need to be prepared not to depend on that stuff. But yeah, I take a GPS now, and I like to know where I am.
I used to take extensive maps, and I always have a compass buried somewhere. But now you can't get the half-mile maps anymore unless you've already downloaded them. And
Yeah.
but even an overview map would, if you have a compass, would keep you from getting hopelessly.
I take both. I take a GPS, but I do have paper maps on everything that I'm doing. And that has, when I was on the Continental Divide Trail and I was actually leading a group of 4 plus me, and they were green to long distance hiking. And so I trained them before we left. And I felt, responsible. And I had paper maps plus one of the people had gut hook, and one of them and I had my GPS, and we had fires. Gut hook only covers what's right on the trail. So when you have to make detours because of fires and you're in the wilderness, you need those paper maps.
Yeah, that's true.
Fine, but I said as we came to orange tape across the trail, this is why I carry paper maps.
Right, right.
And we simply had to detour, and we were way off the gut hook map by then. Gut hook only covers a narrow piece along the trail. So if you're going to have to make detours and you never know what you're going to find, it pays to have a paper map too. I'm not terribly good with a compass. I mean, I can tell which way is north, south, and east and west, but I'm not especially good at fine tuning it. But I can follow a map pretty darn well. So I would recommend taking some paper along with your electronics.
Yeah, it's getting harder to do, to find the map. I mean, you can, but it can take a lot of work to go through the Forest Service and things like, or you can always get the overview maps. Those are pretty easy.
Yeah, actually, well, I started doing national scenic trails, like I said, when I was 60. So 20 years ago, you didn't have gut hook.
No.
You didn't have gut hook. You had to have paper maps. You didn't, I didn't get my first Garmin until, wow, if I looked in my book, I could tell you when, but I certainly had a lot of the trail under my belt by then. And I had a Garmin, but there wasn't a gut hook. There wasn't a half mile. And I sat in front of my computer with my Garmin and on base camp would follow the lines on the topos and figure out where the trail was growing in. And I drew my own line. You don't have to do that anymore.
No.
But, electronics first came out, people thought I was a little weird because I did that before I left, but I like knowing where I am.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah. In terms of survival, you got to have water. But
you
no
gotta have
water is ranks right up there with
it. And it is best not to get lost. I mean, we talk about being found or unfound. We're a little loose with what is lost, but I want to at least be able to look at my electronic and know where I am and where the trail is supposed to be, even if it doesn't seem to be quite where it's supposed to be. I have a lot better chance of getting found within, half a day then.
Yeah, I really agree with you. Yeah. In fact, I had a GPS unit. It was the Garmin 60C or something like that when I did the Wind Rivers quite a few years ago. And I did from Green River to Big Sandy. It was quite a few miles. And the first couple hours out, I dropped my GPS in the stream. And it was supposed to be waterproof or water resistant, and it wasn't. And it was, so I had two good sets of maps.
The stream is not water resistant. That requires a lot more.
Yeah, well, it's supposed to handle 10 feet for 10 minutes or something, and it didn't.
Yeah.
But I did have two good sets of maps. I had an overview and the 1 to 48,000 map that was really good. So
yeah.
So I was kind of lost, but I was consulting the maps all the time too. So
right.
Yeah.
I think it's important to carry both and not depend on one or the other. When I have an inReach now, and whether I was working with a Dakota, Oregon, or an inReach, I like following my little red line and knowing where it is. There, you also have to realize that I'm not smart enough to tell you why, but there are errors in the maps you have. And it can say you're standing on the trail and you're standing where it says the trail is, but there isn't any trail there. Well, you're close.
Yeah, you could, if you have some grass, you could be 10 feet from the trail and you can't see it.
Yes, and 10 feet, depending on the terrain, is a lot of not knowing where you are. If you're in a steep area, 10 feet. If you're in a steep, very wooded area, 10 feet is a long way from where you are. And I've certainly crisscrossed back and forth at different times trying to find, I know I went over my red line 3 times. Where was it?
Yeah. Oh, that takes so much time. But nevertheless, GPS is totally amazing. I was hiking a section of the PCT one time. I had to finish it at night. And every time I would come into a rocky area, there was no trail because it's rocks. And so I would lose it. But I would just take out my GPS and it would put me right back on it. And that was
yes. Snow can do that too.
Yeah. Yeah. So
I'm not for throwing away either one. I like my GPS and I like my paper maps.
Yeah, the GPS is completely revolutionized. Yeah.
They're both helpful.
I agree 100%. Yeah. Yeah, you got to have knowledge of what's around. So could you give us a quick, every adventure is different. So could you tell us the difference between the PCT and the AT, even though it has fewer miles, and then the CDT? Because they're all a different adventure, aren't they?
Okay, the way I usually phrase it is the AT starts on a mountain, ends on a mountain, and they try to run you up and down every mountain in between they can find.
Yeah.
It is not easy. The AT is only made for people. People have hands.
Yeah.
So there are places on the AT that you will need your feet and your hands to negotiate the trail. There's a fair amount of rock scrambling. Some of the places they don't know how to do switchbacks, so it's straight up and straight down. The AT is not an easy trail. It has less mileage than the PCT. It has more elevation gain and loss on the whole trail than the PCT does.
Yeah, even though you have Forrester Pass 13,200 feet on the PCT, the AT still has more elevation. So that gives you a mental picture of what you're doing there.
You go up and down and up and down and up and down and up and down. More than the PCT. The PCT starts on a border, ends on a border, takes you within range of climbing many, many mountains along the way if you want to.
Yeah.
But it doesn't take you up and down all of them.
Yeah. You don't have to do Mount Whitney.
It gets higher than the AT, but it doesn't do it in a straight up fashion. Although some places it's kind of straight up, or steep at least. The Continental Divide Trail, well, and of course the challenges are different. The Pacific Crest Trail, you are challenged also by desert, and you are challenged by snow and high altitude. So those are different challenges than the AT has. The Continental Divide Trail is in some ways similar to the Pacific Crest Trail. It's a Western trail. It's the newest trail. I'm 80, I finished at 76, about when I was probably 74 or 75 and working on the Continental Divide Trail. There were some fairly big sections that were not very well marked, or there were also choices about what you do. It was thought of more as a route than a specific trail. So trail navigation was another challenge added onto that. In the book, I joke, but it wasn't a joke. It was real.
Yeah.
The only major named trail I've ever been on where the cow paths were more pronounced than the trail and would lead you astray. There's a lot of politics involved in how the Continental Divide Trail is now. One of the persons that I think that we should never forget was a big essential piece in becoming the Continental Divide was Jim Wolfe. There's a fair amount of people who don't care for Jim Wolfe. I had no problem with Jim Wolfe. I got to actually give him a few waypoints that he added onto stuff he had. But mostly the Continental Divide Trail hikers now use the Bear Creek maps, and it is getting to be a little more in stone. What is the CDT? When I did it, and earlier than when I did it, it was thought of more as a route, and there's several different ways that you could go.
Make your own adventure, yeah.
Yeah, and you could follow Lay's maps, and they had alternate routes, and then there's the Bear Creek maps, which are more accurate, which is nice, more detailed. But, you know, any route was good as long as you started in Mexico and ended up in Canada.
Right. You know, I tried to find the trail.
And when there's fires, if you want to be a through hiker, you're ended up not being on the trail anyway. You're taking roads.
Yeah.
And even on some of the years I went, weren't as horrendous as this year, but people wanted to be through hikers bad enough, they would do 200, 300, 400 miles of road walking in areas they could not go on the trail. So, you know, what's the trail? The trail is whatever you decide to walk on. I'm a stickler that I want my footsteps to connect. Okay. Sometimes, and because I'm a section hiker, I've been able to go back and do things that were closed one year and I could do them in another year. But a through hiker who wants to go all the way through generally wants their footsteps to connect. And sometimes that means a lot of road walking when there's fires. I got sidetracked, but we were comparing the trails. They're all different. They're all glorious. They all have different challenges. And the trail I'm on right now is entirely different kind of hiking, but it has challenges too.
Yes, they all do. And it's so different. You never just have it figured out because, you know, the thing of having to consult your GPS constantly to stay, especially if there's any snow, to stay on the CDT.
Yeah.
That's tiring. That adds so much work to it. That's just, you know, as part of the adventure, though, you have to say that's part of the adventure.
Now, because I'm a section hiker, and when I go, I'm a section hiker because I don't want to be on an enormous amount of snow. And so, you know, you choose your section for the time of year and whether the snow's there or not. Like I say, I did the Sierra in late summer. I didn't have snow bridges or, you know, huge raging rivers to cross. Smart.
Yeah, really.
Not to go, really. And I know when to go.
Yeah.
If you're a through hiker, you take what you get along the way, and some of it is really rather dangerous. Section hikers have it. Sometimes I have to make more miles to get my food drops to go out right, but I can choose the best time of year for whatever piece I want to do.
So there's another thing about community with your planning there. You had a friend that you mentioned quite a bit in the book named trail name. By the way, your trail name, you gave yourself the name Medicare Pastor.
Right.
Yeah. And her trail name was Rockstar.
Yes.
And
she's still supporting me in part of my Utah trip this year.
Wow. And she gets in as much hiking as she can?
She's not really that much of a hiker anymore, but she still loves supporting me. So, hey, I'll take it.
Yeah, isn't that wonderful?
She did a through hike of the Pacific Crest Trail. Mm-hmm. She's only through hiked one of the national scenic trails, but she did it as a through hike, and she actually started over 3 years at the beginning because she wanted to be able to say she did it all by a through hike.
Wow.
So if 2 of the years she didn't, 1 year she stopped fairly early in Southern California. Another year she got all the way to Ashland, Oregon and stopped. She started all the way over again the 3rd year and made it all the way.
Wow. Yeah, yes. By the time you get to Ashland, Oregon, you've really done most of it. I mean, you've really overcome so many obstacles. And Oregon, I live in Oregon, but Oregon, they say it's the easiest part of the trail. And from my experience, I'd say, yeah, it probably is.
It is in many ways. I did Oregon in a lot of different summers because it's fairly close to Washington. And a couple of the times I was very glad when I got my GPS because it was a high snow year. And so it was on a lot of snow in Oregon for quite a ways. We had some difficult times with all the snow. But. Yeah,
that is a problem. You have to wait late enough in the year in Oregon to not have that real snow problem. And then if you wait too long, then you have the fire season.
Yes. Well, actually, fire season is starting very early now. Yeah. Section hiking and through hiking are just different animals. We may walk our feet on the same trails, and you can get a triple crown either way, but they are done differently. And there's a lot of, some people say to me, whoa, but isn't that hard to get your trail legs every year? Well, I
Yeah,
don't know, I'm kind of used to it. So
yeah,
I don't particularly think so. And then I would say, yes, but I get to get every trail at its optimum, most beautiful,
right.
and least dangerous, actually. Uh, and I would not want to mess with early snow and raging rivers in the Sierra. And uh,
Those are,
that's beyond what I want to do.
when you find somebody that's died on the PCT, a lot of times it's crossing a river.
Yes, yes. I mean, you can die in the fall too, but you know, it's not the same.
No,
I mean, there are risks in all of life.
yeah,
Whether you're getting out of bed in the morning or tripping on a curb outside your motel, there are risks, and you can die. You don't have to be on a trail. There's the biggest danger, if all hikers will tell you, is driving to the trails is far riskier than walking them.
yeah,
But there are risks everywhere in life, and there are risks on the trail. And I think older people need to realize that. You could die out there, but you know what? You're going to die someday anyway.
yeah, yeah.
And I know people who have tripped on curbs outside of motels and been brain damaged for the
Yeah,
rest of their life.
yeah,
All risks are not on the trail.
no.
Uh,
And, there was the most dangerous thing that happened to me after 2 or 3 weeks out on the trail at that point was something that's illegal happened. And that is, I was taking a break uh, near a blind corner of the trail, and I had pulled myself off to the side so if anybody came by, they could walk by me. But all of a sudden, something illegal happened. 3 mountain bikers came by roaring around that corner. And had I been standing up,
Yep.
there would have been no way for us to avoid each other. 20 miles an hour head on. And,
Yep.
We might have been thrown off the trail. So you're not expecting to be hurt by a mountain biker. They're not supposed to be on the trail. So the unexpected can happen too.
Yeah, there's a certain section of the PCT that is extremely popular with mountain bikers, and I wrote about that. But
Yeah, you did mention it, yeah. But not only were they illegal, but they were being irresponsible by disregarding a blind corner.
yes, well, yeah, they're not interested in
Safety.
Well, they're not interested in your safety. They might be interested in theirs, but only a little.
Yeah, that's right. So very quickly, your next book, I haven't read that one yet, but the book title is Aren't You Afraid? And that's about your current hiking adventures,
yes,
plus what you've already accomplished. And that is not a mountainous trail for the most part, I wouldn't think. Maybe
it
some.
depends on where. It is, if you will look at a map, there's no mountain range that runs east and west across the United States.
Right.
Okay, so it's an entirely different kind of hiking. It was put together a very long time ago. I have in the book part of the history that precedes the current ADT. And I don't remember the years without looking it up, but there was, when I was probably in my 30s, there was something called Heiken Nation, which was inspired by, I guess it was in the 70s. I can't remember exactly what it was inspired by, but the leader of it's better in the book. I can't remember the details, but Backpacker magazine person was part of that, and it was to just inspire the whole nation that you could really hike. And there were people who walked all the way across the United States. That was kind of the forerunner of the ADT. The ADT puts together American Discovery Trail, puts together it doesn't create its own trail. It puts together what's there. And so sometimes you're on country roads, sometimes you're on highways, sometimes you're on mountain trails. Um, it's a little bit of all of it, but you have to find a place to be every night. And yeah, I don't stealth camp. I I don't want somebody to say, "Why are you on my property?" I ask.
Yeah.
So I knock on a lot of doors, and that has turned out to be the charm of the trail for me because I have met all these wonderful people all the way across the United States. Now, when you get in the West, it's a little more like the National Scenic Trails because it's more mountainous, but it tends to put together. The CDT has some areas that are kind of old roads too, but old mountain roads, ATV kind of roads. It puts together what's there. And when you're going east to west, most of the National Scenic Trails go north and south. And it's actually the same as the Continental Divide Trail here and there in Colorado. And as far as height, we were comparing the trails. The Continental Divide Trail goes over two 14,000-foot mountains. So everything has its own challenges.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
But everybody always asks me, "Aren't you afraid?" And they're especially afraid when I talk about all the people I meet. Most long distance hikers learn how to deal with the fact there's wildlife out there, and we're usually pretty excited when we get to see them. But everybody remains skeptical about the two-legged critters, and I have to meet two-legged critters everywhere I go on the ADT. I have to ask for a place to put my tent. I have to ask for water. You can't trust any natural water source other than a little strip of the Appalachian Trail to purify with our purification methods because they're after bacteria and viruses. They're not after chemicals from farm runoff. So I have to ask for water. I have to ask for a place to be. And, oh yeah, we're human animals. We have to go to the bathroom. How do you do that when you're going through suburbia?
Yeah.
And you're in a car, so you can't get to the gas stations. So I meet a lot of people, and I have met a lot of wonderful, wonderful people. And also, it's been a very interesting thing going across the country.
Yeah.
The country and the possibilities for hiking are not limited to the National Scenic Trails. There's other trails.
So how much of the ADT is road walking?
On the eastern part, a lot of it. Most of what I just did Nebraska, the first half of Nebraska, well, it's got a lot of bicycle trails too, but sometimes a lot of paved bicycle trails. So it's not all road walking, but it's not like mountain trails for the most part. Clear till Denver anyway. And then you're into the Rockies. But you're still probably, well, what's the difference between a mountain road and a trail? It's only how wide it is. And so the Continental Divide Trail has some old roads that you're walking on too, which are kind of trails and kind of old Jeep roads. And so when you get to the west, you get more of that. But you also go through cities, you go through, I mean, it's a little bit of everything. And it's really quite interesting.
I bet it is. When we get off the call, I'm going to have to get that book. Yeah.
It's just different. And throughout that book, I talk about fear. And, everybody always asks me, "Aren't you afraid?" And if I'm talking about National Scenic Trails, any group I've done presentations to, they want to know about the bears.
Yeah.
What are you afraid of? I mean, that's what everybody's excited about. What are you afraid of? And And so I talk about a whole lot of views I have about fears, and I don't think we have to be afraid of everybody. I have knocked on random doors all the way from the Atlantic to Ogallala, Nebraska. Random doors. I have no idea who's behind that door. I have met wonderful, wonderful, wonderful people.
Awesome. Yeah.
We don't need to be afraid of everybody. Are there some turkeys out there? Yes. But the vast majority, 95, 98% are wonderful people.
So that's got to be a wonderful story, because what we hear about people from the news media would lead you to believe that there aren't very many nice people out there. And
Well, I talk about that. What makes news news?
yeah,
What makes it be something that goes in the news? And stop and think. I thought this up all by myself, and somebody told me it's journalism 101. But in order to be newsworthy, something has to be different, not usual. Usual stuff doesn't make the news.
right.
What you do in your daily life and as usual does not make the news. The unusual makes the news. And yes, I'm not saying there's no evil in the world or no people who could wish you ill, seriously. But that's what's unusual. Like I say, 2%, maybe 3%. What's usual doesn't make the news.
Right.
What's usual is all the wonderful people I have met who are behind the doors I knock on when I need water. Or can I please put my tent up in your yard tonight?
Yeah.
Um,
Well, I'm going to have to read about that. I enjoyed the first book, but this is completely different. So
it is completely different. It is still a form of hiking, and it's pretty interesting, actually.
yeah,
And there is beauty in the plains. There's beauty. The second half of Nebraska was technically on a road, but they follow canals all the way on the second half of Nebraska. I never knew that. Like I say, I learned a lot of stuff about the country I live in.
yeah.
And the people who have settled it, and I'm a history junkie. I kind of like reading all those historical markers and thinking, oh wow, I never knew that. I never knew those people settled there. I've learned a lot. Technically, I knew some of that before, but you learn it in a different way on your own 2 feet.
Right. So, Mary, where can people get your books?
On Amazon.
That makes it pretty simple, doesn't it?
That makes it simple. And the first one is Old Lady on the Trail. That's about the National Scenic Trails. Yeah, I learned some things when I wrote that. The second book is a better written book. I wish it was more popular, but people are all hot for the National Scenic Trails, and they've never heard of the American Discovery Trail.
Yeah, I think that's going to be very interesting. I'm looking forward to
that. I invite people to read them both. They're both selling. One is selling still better than the other one, and it's been out a long time. It's still selling. So yeah.
Do you have a website
where people read things?
Do you have a website where people can learn more about you? Or
I do have a website. I have a hard time getting all my long distance hikings in and actually doing a whole lot with my website, but I do have a website, and you can find out about the books there. And occasionally I get something printed up on it. I also am on trailjournals.com whenever I'm on a trail, and I've had people who follow me there a long time. That's not any kind of polished writings. That's the nighttime, okay, I misspelled 5,000 words in this thing, but it's got to go out the way it is. It's the raw cut of what happened during the day. And if you like journals, it's there. And if you don't, well, I learned certainly in writing the books, there are people who don't like my writing. Well, they were expecting something different, and you just get me. There are people who read it and think it's the living end, the wonderful, most wonderful thing they ever wrote, and I get comments on both of those. I'm not a superb writer, never tried to be. I'm just telling you what my story is.
Do you have any editors at all?
Yes.
Yeah.
I do, but also in writing, I have discovered there's all kinds of editors, and if you want to do it really, really right, you need about four different kinds, and I can really only afford one.
Yeah, yeah, I've had the same issue there. You spend so much money writing a book that it can never possibly pay for
Right.
itself.
And Old Lady on the Trail, the primary, one of the primary digs that people are unhappy with is that I don't have pictures in it. Or more maps or more pictures, but it covers like 14 or 15 years, and it would have to be a much bigger book and much more expensive book,
Yeah.
and no one would buy it. So
Yeah, yeah.
if
So,
I do presentations for people, I show them pictures, but they can't go in the book. The book
right.
is big.
Yeah, I understand that from my experience. Yeah. So, Mary, everybody listening, the books are Old Lady on the Trail, Triple Crown at 76, and Aren't You Afraid? And
Aren't You Afraid? American Discovery Trail from the Atlantic Ocean to Nebraska.
Okay, that much of the trail so far. So
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to reading that second one. And whoever's listening to this, I hope you've learned a lot about hiking. Mary said that she doesn't have too much trouble getting her trail legs back, and I think that hiking is part mental and organization.
Yes.
And that part you've got down, you don't lose that. So, and you know how to breathe going up the hills and how to use your poles and all those skills. You
Yes.
don't lose those every time. So,
That is
anyway,
correct.
anybody who's listening at any age, especially older, but at any age, you can really pick out some great, inspiring things from the conversation that we've had today. I hope you'll listen. I hope you'll buy the books. And Mary, I want to really thank you for talking to me today.
You are most welcome.
Yeah. So we're going to end it here.